All right, folks. We will call this January 8th regular City Commission meeting to order. I'd like to begin by offering Commissioner Coleman's apologies. He has caught the flu bug, and I invited him not to share that with us. So he's going to stay at home and be with himself with that. We have had some consideration about me reading the entire agenda. We're going to continue with that process until we get all of our technology issues, and then we'll come back and address it. So tonight we'll go ahead and read the agenda in its entirety for the folks at home who may not have access to it. But the first thing we're going to do is call to order, and then we'll have an approval of the agenda. Commissioner Martin will be providing our invocation tonight. We'll follow that up with the Pledge of Allegiance. Then we have presentations, which are limited to 15 minutes. The first one I'm actually going to pull off. I think I dropped the ball on this. The Lions Club art contest winner. The student wasn't notified in time, and her parents couldn't quite get here, so I'll try to do a better job, and we'll get that on the next meeting or the one following that. Then we have our Employee of the Year. Our Employee Service Recognition. We're also going to pull the Newberry Agritech Innovation Park. We've got a great presentation, but we really want our technology to be all working. So, and I should also say, if you're watching us at home on channel 97, you may be having some audio problems. I invite you to flip over to YouTube if you can and watch us there. We're working with Cox, and it's an issue on Cox's end to fix those audio issues. Then we will have citizens announcements. These are 2-minute announcements. They're the non-controversial, tell us about a garage sale, that kind of a thing. And then we have our consent agenda, which has 4 items: the December 11th, 2017 regular commission meeting minutes, invoices, December power cost adjustment, the proclamation honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And then we'll move on to public hearing and ordinances. We have 2. Item A is legislative public hearing and first reading of ordinance 2018-02, GRU gas franchise. Item B is legislative public hearing and first reading of ordinance 2018-03, FPU gas franchise. Then we'll move on to agenda items. Item A is Lexington Park 2, Champions Park Land Development Agreement. Item B is Lexington Park 2, Sandia Town Park Development Agreement. Item C is election proclamation. Item D is engineering study for Countryway Stormwater System. Item E is State Road 45 Force Main Relocation Contract Award. Item F is authorization to submit 2 grant applications to Suwannee River Management District, and I believe we're going to pull that one as
that's the one that I submitted the staff report to just a moment ago.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to comments from manager, attorney, clerk, commission, mayor, and citizens, and we will adjourn. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as it has been amended?
So moved.
I have a first from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Martin, if you would, sir, please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge.
We bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening and ask for your hand in guiding us through the city's business. We ask for your blessing among our staff member Dallas as he's dealing with a death in his family. We ask for your blessing over Jamie Jones, who is dealing with some melanoma cancer on his head, and we wish them both a quick and speedy recovery, as well as Commissioner Coleman and the flu. As we tread through these waters tonight, as we do in our lives, we hope that we can just be a beacon of what you have shown us through your sacrifice and sacrifice of your Son. We pledge these things in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Okay, so we've removed the item A under presentation, so we'll move straight on to the Employee of the Year. Mr. Manager, you want to
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to invite Deborah Starr, our Human Resources Director, up to the podium to share in this presentation. We're always very excited to recognize a staff person as Employee of the Year, and Deborah's going to share this year's award.
Excuse me. Each year, the City of Newberry recognizes a single employee for their uncommon contribution to the city and their strong work ethic. The selection criteria for the City Employee of the Year is an employee must have worked a minimum of 1 year in regular capacity for the City of Newberry and cannot currently be in a probationary status at the time of the nomination. The employee must demonstrate the ability to work as a team member, demonstrate a positive attitude toward work, responsibilities, co-workers, and citizens, and serve as a role model for others. The employee must have a willingness to take initiative as well as accept and carry out additional responsibilities beyond regular job assignments for the good of the city as a whole. Ms. Tamano Dean is the recipient of the City of Newberry's 2017 Employee of the Year Award. Ms. Dean started working with the City of Newberry in 2015 as an administrative assistant for the Utilities and Public Works Department. As this year's Employee of the Year, Ms. Dean will receive $200, a plaque, a designated parking space, and a gift certificate to Backyard Barbecue. Ms. Dean was not able to attend tonight, but I'm sure she appreciates the recognition and all of her benefits as to that.
Well, let's give her a round of applause for the record. Always good to recognize an employee.
As well, this evening, we're recognizing our employees' years of service. Each year, employees are recognized for reaching employment service milestones. On December 15, 2017, the following individuals were recognized and received a plaque commemorating their years of service with the City of Newberry. Ms. Mia Brody, Finance and Administration, 5 years of service. Ms. Donna Pons, Finance and Administration, 5 years of service. Mr. Blaine Roberson, Recreation and Facilities, 5 years of service. Mr. Brandon Massimilio, Utilities and Public Works, 5 years of service. Ms. Wendy Kinzer, Building and Planning, 10 years of service. Mr. Sean True, Fire Department, 15 years of service. Mr. Kevin Farr, Fire Department, 20 years of service. Ms. Johnny Mae Garrison, Finance and Administration, 20 years of service. And Mr. Henry Rodriguez, Utilities and Public Works, 20 years of service. Again, some of these individuals weren't able to attend tonight, so again, you know, we want to recognize them and appreciation for all they do for the City of Newberry.
Do we have anybody here in attendance? No?
No.
Okay, well, let's give them a round of applause too for the record. Thank you. Maybe you could get the pictures with them when
Yes.
when you give them the plaques.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might
Please.
just add that we say often that Newberry's finest assets, the City of Newberry's finest assets, greatest assets are our staff. That is absolutely true. Ms. Dean was our Employee of the Year, very deserving. I considered her the finest of a fine group. The nominations were broad, and when you were looking through the list of nominations, you think, well, gee whiz, every one of these guys or girls was very worthy. So Tamano being considered the worthiest this year, and she is a great asset to the city. And going through the years of service, you know, as we went through that list and looking who was going to be identified, recognized for the milestone, it occurred to me that they're all difference makers. I mean, these are all people that are really getting it done for the city, and then I just thought on a bigger scale, well, gee, that's just because everybody working here is really bringing a lot to the game. They got a lot going on, making better things happen for the citizens and residents of Newberry. So this is my chance to publicly recognize them and tell the commission and the community how much I appreciate each and every one of them.
Mr. Mayor, I want
Yes,
to
ma'am.
acknowledge Wendy Kinzer.
I thought you might.
I do. So, Ms.
She
Kinzer-
just missed her moment. So.
She did. But we're going to give it to her now.
Yes.
Stand up,
So-
Wendy.
So Ms. Kinzer has been employed and working for the city in a great capacity for 10 years. So if you would
Well done.
come
Thank you.
forward.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo with manager's comments. You know, these days it's fairly rare to find people that will stay in one place for 10, 15, 20 years, and it's incredibly valuable to the stability of an institution. So we appreciate all the years of service and sticking with us. And I believe that takes us all the way through our presentations. So we will move to citizens announcements. Remember, these are your 2-minute announcements. If you got anything going on in town you want to let the folks know about, please step forward.
Good afternoon,
Mr. Day.
Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Marlon Day with the Newberry Branch Library, Alachua County Library District. I'd like to remind you that tomorrow is the My City, I'm Part of It, I'm Proud of It program. It's going to be at 3:15. If anybody has any connections,
3:15?
3:15. If anybody has any connections, we ask that it not rain at that point.
We'll do our best.
Thank you. We are on Wednesday evening. We postponed last week's habit trackers for habit trackers for planner people because of the weather on Wednesday. So we're going to have it this Wednesday at 5:30. And once again, the intern application deadline is at the end of this month, January 26th, for high school juniors and seniors who are interested in interning at the library.
And Mr. Day, do you have specific jobs for the commission that have RSVP and told you that they're coming, or you just need us there to pitch in?
We don't have specific jobs. We will have somebody doing the race and perhaps helping out with some of the other games if the weather is clear and we can be outside playing the games. You know, just talk about working for the city and what it means to you, and we'll have like a question and answer session at the end when we break apart.
All right. Okay. Thank you, sir. Other citizen comments?
Good afternoon. I am here from the Newberry Elementary School SAC program, which is our Student Advisory Council. So I'm going to read the announcement from Principal Perlman. Alachua County Schools is in the middle of a community-wide discussion over how to meet the facility needs of our local schools, which you guys have been discussing. As part of this discussion, the district has put together a comprehensive list of projects that need to be done at each school, and your input and the input of the citizens is needed. All community stakeholders are invited to attend a community meeting that will be held at Newberry Elementary School on Thursday, January 18th, from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Newberry Elementary School cafeteria. Representatives from the district administration, district facilities, the Alachua Council of PTA will be facilitating the discussion to learn more about our facility situation, and they look forward to you sharing your ideas about what needs to be done at our schools.
Ms. Amy, do you know, is there a proposal for any tax increase to pay for any infrastructure needs that they may identify?
That part I am not sure about, sir.
Okay.
I just know that this portion is kind of where they're going to get together and get the ideas from the community as what the community sees the needs are. Then the school board and the councils will then address that as far as financial or how to meet those needs.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for? Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion from Commissioner McGehee. Second from Commissioner Glanzer. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. And we will move on to public hearings and ordinances. Item A is legislative public hearing and first reading of ordinance 2018-02, the GRU gas franchise. I know we've been working on this for a while. Mike, you want to take us through?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you're correct. We have been working on this for quite a while. We have the finish line in sight. We've completed a feasibility study where we got some recommendations from a consultant engineer on what we should do with regards to natural gas service in the city of Newberry. And that all, I guess that report came in about last January, about a year ago. And so we got direction from the commission to begin working for non-exclusive franchise agreements with any and all takers. We have been working with Gainesville Regional Utilities and Florida Public Utilities to establish franchises in our corporate limits. Through the spring and the summer, the commission saw some draft agreements and authorized us to proceed with the authorship, the development of ordinances. And so we have both ordinances in front of you tonight. They were crafted by the city attorney's office with input from Gainesville Regional Utilities and Florida Public Utilities respectively. I would say that with the exception of the form of ordinance, they're the same agreements that you saw over the summer time. They've just been moved to ordinance form, and there were some minor tweakings in an attempt to simply standardize the two agreements and make them read as much the same as they possibly can. I would say that the most significant difference between the two is the Florida Public Utilities Ordinance, which you'll be hearing next, is identified as a franchise for natural gas service within our community, within Newberry city limits. Florida Public Utilities currently has ordinances to provide LP gas service within our right-of-ways. GRU's ordinance is a little broader. It's the one that you're contemplating tonight is for liquid propane or natural gas service within our city limits, because GRU currently doesn't have an ordinance or a franchise for providing liquid propane service in our city limits. So we're a little bit broader with them, but those are the only significant differences between the two ordinances. So I will spare you an in-depth itemization of FPU's ordinance when we get to that point. I really would like to just go through the salient points of each ordinance, the key elements, which are on page 2 and 3 of the staff report. I'll just kind of read through there. The franchises are non-exclusive, so either company has the right to provide service, and we anticipate that future companies could. Now, our consultant think that the likelihood of a third company coming in is very low. Just we don't really have the gas demand in Newberry to make it optimal for more than one or two companies to survive here. The entity has the right to construct, maintain, and operate gas facilities within our right-of-ways and in our corporate limits. It's a 30-year term, and it can be renewed for 2 5-year extensions, so it potentially is a 40-year term. The operator must operate within safe practices, can't do anything dangerous that would endanger our residents. The operator still has to obtain permits to construct in our right-of-ways just like they always did. They just now have the right to be there and to sell. They have to restore all public property and right-of-ways to reasonable condition, pre-disturbance condition. The city will receive a 6% franchise fee on gross revenues from the sale of natural gas or LP gas. The city agrees not to engage in the natural gas business. That's probably one of the things that the commission needed to consider heavily whenever they were considering taking this path is that we're not going to compete. We agree not to compete for the duration of the franchise. Any newly annexed properties will be subject to the franchise fees, and at the end of the term of the agreement, the city reserves the right to purchase the system and then jump into the natural gas business. And GRU was been very amenable to that. When we were discussing it with them, their resistance was gotten over pretty quickly when they considered, well, that's how we got in the natural gas business. We exercised that right from a franchise agreement. So those are the most important parts of a 10-page franchise agreement, and ordinance 2018-02 is attached for your review. Staff's recommendation is to approve ordinance 2018. This is the GRU ordinance on first reading, and to authorize staff to advertise for second and final reading and schedule second and final reading on January the 22nd. And say that between now and then, these have both been reviewed by the counterparty, both for GRU and Florida Public Utilities, and the feedback we got was we're satisfied. In the meantime, if things do come up, because inevitably they do, if they're immaterial, we'll disclose them and we'll have second reading. If what comes up is considered to be material, then we'll reschedule first hearing, and we'll keep moving forward. But we're going to make sure we do this right so that it withstands a challenge. And I guess the other thing I should mention is that the genesis of all of this is that one of our industrial property owners has indicated a pretty significant need for natural gas service at their property, and so they're under construction to build facilities that will utilize natural gas, and we need to make sure that someone has the right to sell them natural gas and use our right-of-ways to get it there. So I'm available for questions if you have it.
Scott, do you want to go ahead and read the ordinance?
I'm
Yeah.
happy to, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2018-02, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, granting to the City of Gainesville, Florida, a municipal subdivision of the state of Florida doing business as Gainesville Regional Utilities, a non-exclusive franchise to use the public rights-of-way of the City of Newberry for the construction, maintenance, and operation of a liquid propane or natural gas distribution system in the City of Newberry, providing for and prescribing the terms and conditions under which said non-exclusive rights, privileges, and franchise may be exercised, providing for codification of same, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-02 upon its reading by title only.
I have that motion. Motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Martin. Commissioner McGee.
Two questions. First one is what kind of timeline are we looking at here? I mean, GRU, because I know GRU seems to be the one that's really pushing to move this way. Is that correct?
Both entities have expressed an interest in having gas distribution systems within our right-of-ways. From my seat, it seems to be pretty equal. I think
Okay.
that to construct a gas main, if GRU serves us, I think that we'll be extending. And by the way, if I get anything wrong, Dave Bolio from GRU is in the audience. He can correct me, but I'll take a crack at it. GRU would either be extending east. Well, they would be extending west from Jonesville, where they have gas main facilities now, or they would interconnect with the Sable Trails pipeline, which is up near the county line on the Gilchrist, Alachua County line. So it's about 3 miles out, I believe. And I think construction of a pipeline would probably be on the neighborhood of 6 months. I think in the interim, because I think that our need in Newberry is going to be quicker than that, then there are some interim measures. We could either use LP gas and work some sort of a deal with the property owner so that he's not paying normal LP gas prices, or that it's possible to bring in compressed natural gas system. But I understand that's a pretty expensive enterprise, but we'll do something on the interim. I believe that GRU has already gotten into design and permitting. Maybe a head nod on that. I think GRU's going to cut loose as quick as we can get through
Yeah.
second reading here.
And then the other thing is, do we have any projected amounts for revenue stream for the city? I mean, have you guys?
Not currently, because we don't have a great understanding of what the gas load is going to be from the new property owner. We don't have a good enough one for me to provide you with a revenue estimate. If you'll remember from our consultant's analysis that the natural gas as a commodity is less expensive than liquid propane. So if we're getting franchise fees off of the gross revenues, we would anticipate a reduction in revenues, but the benefit to the customers in the community and the draw for economic development of natural gas outweigh those things. We think that we'll see such an increase in use rate that we'd be net neutral pretty quickly, and then and see positive revenues moving forward.
Thank you.
Commissioner Martin and then Commissioner Farnsworth.
I just wanted to comment that I was glad to see that the Commission's going to effort to make sure that the experts are handling the utilities. I didn't want to get into the utility business with natural gas or with liquid propane, so I'm glad we are endeavoring to leave that to the experts.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
A couple questions. the agreement's gonna be for a 30-year period
Yes, sir.
at a
Base agreement.
Okay, at 6% franchise fee, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that the normal amount or
Yes, sir.
Florida?
That is the typical amount. I would say there's a little more variety in natural gas franchise than there is in electric. Utility franchises, with rare exceptions, electric franchise fees are 6%. In the natural gas industry, I see a little more variability. There's actually some language in here that would notice the city commission can direct a change. With appropriate notice, the city commission could direct a change.
so it can be increased or decreased?
It could be.
And the other question is, how is it gonna be decided where GRU is gonna be servicing versus where FPU is gonna be servicing?
Good old open market free enterprise, wherever they can get and cut the deal. I assume they're going to meet with customers. One has better pricing than the others. I'm not prepared to speak to that, but they're going to meet with developers and talk about the benefits of putting their natural gas systems in new developments, those types of things.
Okay.
Commissioner Martin?
Have we discussed, or has it been brought up, any sort of a cap to the amount of that tax? If we are entertaining larger customers in the future, has that even been brought up?
That has not. That's a great problem to have.
Sure.
I would say that the ordinance allows for that as it stands. If you'll remember, the Clay Electric franchise has both a cap and what I call the economic development clause, or the economic incentive clause, that says by mutual agreement we can offer customer Z that is not here yet, to entice them. We can offer them a discounted rate for a period of time or forever. So I think that would be that opportunity if we want to cap a customer. I would say that by far the biggest user of natural gas in Newberry is Argos, and I say this is in the form of disclosure. Argos is self-providing. They are exempt from this requirement. They're not selling natural gas. They're purchasing it from the Florida Gas Transmission Pipeline, and they're piping it straight into their front door. So the city's franchise agreement does not anticipate their gas load, nor do we anticipate receiving revenues from their gas load.
Any further questions or comments from the commission? Does the public have any questions or comments on this agenda item? Hearing none, I would echo Commissioner Martin's sentiments. Good job, staff, on shepherding us through. I look forward to providing a service to the city of Newberry without us having to get involved. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. We'll move on to item B, legislative public hearing and first reading of ordinance 2018-03, the FPU gas franchise. Mike, you want to anything else you want to tell us about this one, or did you
My
cover
only
it all?
comments are ditto. Same thing for Florida Public Utilities. I don't believe they're represented tonight. They may be watching a football game, or they may have had a little
There's a
further to
football game
travel
tonight?
than GRU.
Scott, you want to read that,
Yes,
I
sir,
guess,
Mr.
quickly into the...
Glad to do it. Ordinance number 2018-03, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, granting to Florida Public Utilities Company a non-exclusive franchise to use the public right-of-way of the City of Newberry for the construction, maintenance, and operation of a natural gas distribution system in the City of Newberry, providing for and prescribing the terms and conditions under which the said non-exclusive rights, privileges, and franchise may be exercised, providing for codification of same, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-03 upon its reading by title only.
Did I hear that motion? Make motion to approve. I have a motion from Commissioner Glanzer, second from Commissioner Martin. Any comments or questions about this one? I don't want to seem flippant. It's the same agreement, but if anyone realize they have a question that they didn't get asked on the last one? Hearing none from the commission, do we have any questions or comments from the public on this agenda item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to our agenda items. Lexington Part 2, the Champions Park Land Development Agreement. I think Mr. Thomas, you're going to guide us through this agenda.
Evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Okay, Sandytown Park.
I'd like to congratulate staff on the TVs. It's a new addition. It's very nice not to continually be doing this and bumping into each other.
Not
I
having
can
to turn
look straight
around
through
and
you
crook your
at
neck,
the TV
yeah.
back there. Yes.
And we can still see up front. The Sandytown Park Development Agreement is a development agreement, and we do have a map to refresh everybody's memory. It's been a while.
We'll work on the clicker next. One piece of technology at a time. You know?
That's it. It's a slow evolution.
Yes. We really like the first. There we go.
There we go. Okay. The Sandytown Park Plan Development was approved back in 2011, and has since the timeline on it has since expired. The developer has requested a 10-year extension, and so the document before you expresses that extension, and also a few other fairly minor changes that staff went over with the developer. A couple of things have changed in the interim in terms of the where water and sewer currently are and those kind of things, and so we refined the language a bit, fixed some Scrivener's errors, but the primary purpose of this is to extend the timelines that are in the chart out by 10 years each one, to give them a little bit more time. Basically, when this was approved, it was in the height of or I should say the trough, rather, of the recession period. And so what had perhaps a lot of momentum for development at the time when it was conceived slowed down to a crawl because of the overall national economy as well as the local economy. And so now there's interest again. They want to have the opportunity to go ahead and move forward with this planned development.
So, Brian, it's 10 years added on, and the original agreement was in 2011, and it was good
Correct.
For 8 years?
It
7 years?
expired at the end of 2016. Prior to that time, we went into negotiations with the property owner to go ahead and extend it, and it's
Okay.
just taken kind of this long to get to the point where we're all good with the changes in the language and the timelines.
Okay. And this item came before the planning and zoning, and one of the things, the person who donated the 40 acres, the 80 acres for Champions Park, our agreement on the second piece of Champions Park actually had expired, and it was written in that if we didn't move forward on that there was actually language that the property owner could ask for it back, and he was very gracious in extending the timeline that we had asked for, and we asked for it along much of the same reasoning that things kind of slowed down. We are hoping that they pick up, but we need a little bit more time. So, he was gracious enough to give us how much, roughly equivalent.
An additional 10 years.
An
And so that's
additional
actually
10
the next
years.
item that goes with
Right.
after
So,
this one.
just letting you know, kind of the backstory of what was going on here. So, does the commission have any questions for Mr. Thomas on the extension of this for 10 years? Commissioner Glanzer?
This isn't really about the extension, but do they honestly think that the next 16 or the next 40 acres would be developed with baseball fields to the south? I mean, that's not even on the radar.
Well, if we could, we
talk
actually
about
have
that.
those as
Okay.
two separate items.
Okay.
That's the next one up for consideration.
It was important to the P&Z to know that before they made this decision, because he gave us the 10 years, he said he would agree to that, and he was basically asking for the same consideration. So they're separate on our agenda item, but they're certainly linked in terms of we were both asking for the same consideration of that was predicated on the slowing of the economy. So I'm not sure that anybody thinks that we're going to, and the language in the agreement is just that we need to make movement on that 40 acres and have a direction. I don't know that it doesn't have to be baseball fields or it's not locked into something.
And City Manager pointed out that we're actually going slightly out of order. On the agenda, this was listed as item B. There was a little bit of a mix-up in my staff agenda report that had the two backwards, and so We're actually,
So
this
we're
is
actually talking
consideration
about
for
the
B.
champions.
Well, no, sir,
We're-
this is item B.
Right.
I
You're looking at
inadvertently
item B,
reversed
we're
it.
looking at item A.
Yes, sir.
Because I read
Yeah.
the Champions Parkway Agreement, that's what I was.
Yes, sir, and
Okay.
that's probably where the
Now-
confusion
Now I understand why.
came.
Okay, so but I introduced item, so do you want to go ahead and do B?
We would, the appropriate
Because-
motion, Mr. Mayor, would be to approve the development agreement between the City of Newberry and Lexington Park 2 of Gainesville Limited. Of course, this is an agreement between the City of Newberry and Lexington Park 2 of Gainesville Limited. As our planner has stated, the time frame that is being contemplated for the ultimate extensions under the Sandia Town Park Development Agreement would be until December 31st, 2046.
Okay, we don't have a motion on the floor, so do we need another motion
We need a motion.
to change the agenda, or should
No,
we just
Just go forward. and
go forth with
approve this.
item B and then we'll go back to A?
That's right. That way we don't have to do a conditional approval of item A, so that's why we're.
Okay.
And this is on the south of the ball fields. That's not on the
No.
development.
No,
we
ma'am,
are
this-
talking about Sandia Park now.
Sorry.
So he's
Yeah, this is-
presented B
Okay.
first,
I-
but we're
I
gonna
got
stick
out of
with
order
B.
by mistake.
Okay.
It's,
So I have a question or an opinion. You know, he donated all of that 80 acres for the city to develop these ballparks. And now he wants to develop the acreage next to it, you know, to develop it. But I would feel less than honorable. I mean, I think if he gave 80 acres and we would deny him the ability to develop that property next to it, I mean, I just have a problem with that. I think that he deserves at least that much. Because if we deny it, what's the benefit of the city? And there's no benefit to him. I mean, he loses the opportunity to develop it. Everybody went down the tubes during that period of time when he had the 5 years to do it. So I don't see the advantage of us denying it. Is there any?
And this had a
reason?
unanimous recommendation from the P and Z to
You
approve
did?
it.
Okay.
Mr. Berry, absolutely, that's, the staff's recommendation is approval for those very reasons, is that the original concept was to take advantage of the growth and the expansion of the ballpark. All things being equal, with the economy going down the way it did and everything just slowed down, we think that the master plan that was presented and the overall development for the planned development would be a very good thing for the city of Newberry. And so, for that reason, we recommended approval of the changes to the development agreement and the extension of the timeline to give them more time to develop.
One more comment. I have had a citizen ask me, you know, perhaps we should encourage them to just develop now and not give them the extended time. But you can't get blood from a turnip. There's no, activity going on down there right now. They need the extra time for the economy to catch up with what they had planned to do. So I just wanted to put that out there that, we can deny it, but it's not going to help anybody. at that point.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
The only question I have is the duration. 2046 seems like an excessive amount of time.
That would, Mr. Mayor, that basically would coincide with the final phase of the development. Development of this magnitude usually takes a number of years to go through the various phases from start to finish, and so,
That's the ending time for the whole development.
for the entirety, yes, sir.
And I would say to Commissioner Glanzer's point, as we've seen other developments work their way through the planning and zoning, people who embark on these endeavors spend tens of thousands of dollars with engineering firms and planning firms to figure out the best way to phase into this and what they need to do. And so once you've spent that money, he has a financial incentive to move forward. He wants to move forward quicker than anybody else wants to move forward. So as soon as he can move forward, I'm sure he will. And he's just asking for the same consideration that we asked him for. Commissioner Farnsworth.
One other thing is, just looking over the plan and all that they presented, it appears that majority of the property is going to be used for retail.
There was a
Mr. Mayor,
bowling
based on
alley.
the breakdown on the staff report, the developed, let's see, common area percentage. It doesn't specifically seem to indicate, without going further into the original development order, that it would necessarily be retail, but there does appear to be a fairly substantial amount that would be in some sort of commercial. There's a pretty broad list of commercial uses that qualify under this planned development, one of them being a hotel. If we were actually fortunate enough to have a hotel interested, that would take up quite a substantial footprint right there. They even contemplated in the original development order possibility of having a water park that would complement the ballpark next to it. So there's pretty substantial flexibility built into the planned development to try to allow for a number of different uses in addition to some of the residential component.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner McGee?
Just want to make sure that everybody knows it doesn't mean that they're going to put a water park in, because I know how things that get set up here, they get out and it's a telephone game, and next thing you know, we've got Wet and Wild coming in.
Yes. I was part of this process in 2011, and there were a lot of things that were talked about. You know, hotel was the main thing that they wanted to go after, but they did want to go after the ballpark. They want those kids to be able to play and then come over there and do something. So they talked about bowling alleys and movie theaters and water parks. And, you know, I think as soon as the market bears moving forward, like I said, you know, the developer has the most economic incentive to move forward on this. He's already got the money invested, and, you know, the whole reason to donate 80 acres to the city is a very altruistic move and kind for the city, but it's also to spur the potential for this development so that they can play off of each other. Are there any other comments, questions from the dais? Public comment or questions on this item? Hearing none. Did we get that motion, Ms. Judy?
We do not have a motion.
I'll entertain a motion at this time. I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth and a second from Commissioner Glanzer. Hearing no further comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. Now we will move back to item A, the Lexington Park Champions Park Land Development Agreement.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This does pertain to the 40 acres that is due south of Champions Park, and so basically this gives the city an additional 10 years to also develop that additional 40 acres into other recreational uses. As you mentioned, largely due to the economy slowing down, the original plan for up to, I think it was 32 ball diamonds didn't quite pan out. We've got 16, and this would allow for a number of different uses over the course of the next 10 years for the property to be developed into other recreational purposes as well.
Yep. Does the board have any questions for Brian on this, kind of the flip side of the coin here? Okay. I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner McGee. Any questions or comments from the dais on extending that 10 years? Any questions or comments from the public on extending 10 years? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, and we'll move on to item C, the election proclamation. Ms. Judy? No, if you would, you probably have it closer at hand than I do.
I can read it, Mr. Mayor.
All right,
This
thank
is
you.
City of Newberry proclamation calling a regular election for the City of Newberry under and by virtue of the power vested in yourself as mayor of the City of Newberry. A general election is hereby called to be held in the City of Newberry, Florida on Tuesday, April 10th at 2018 for the following purpose: to elect 3 city commissioners, Group 1 city commissioner to serve a 2-year term, Group 2 city commissioner to serve a 2-year term, and Group 3 city commissioner to serve a 2-year term. The election shall be held at the City of Newberry Municipal Building located at 25420 West Newberry Road, Newberry, Florida, and the polls shall be open at 7 a.m. on said day and closed at 7 p.m. on the same day. The clerks, deputy, and inspectors of said election are as follows. Ms. Megan Lane is the clerk. Ms. Fleta Harris is the assistant clerk. Ms. Sarah Scott is the deputy. Ms. Sharon Cheeseborough is inspector ballot scanner. Mr. Roger Griebing is the inspector and ballot scanner. Ms. Annetta McLeod is the inspector, and Ms. Pat McCoy is also McElroy is also the inspector. The qualifying period begins at noon on Monday, February 12th, and ends at noon on Thursday, February 22nd, 2018. Candidates for the municipal election shall qualify for the office of the city clerk with Judy Rice at our City Hall, located at 25440 West Newberry Road, Newberry, Florida, on Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., except on Monday, February 12th, when qualifying begins at noon, and Thursday, February 22nd, when qualifying ends at noon. The qualifying fee for the Commissioner of the City of Newberry is $115. Given under your hand an official seal of the City of Newberry, Florida, this 8th day of January 2018, Jordan Marlowe, our mayor, and also signature for and attested by Judy S. Rice, our city clerk. The appropriate motion is to pass the proclamation as read by its entirety.
Do I hear that motion? Motion from Commissioner McGehee, second from Commissioner Martin. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public on the election proclamation? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, item D is an engineering study for the Countryway stormwater system. Well done, sir. Already on the Johnny on the spot.
Good evening. As you all know, Countryway is the common name for all the collective phases of the residential development located south of Southwest 15th Avenue and west of State Road 2741. As you also are aware, this residential development has been constructed over the past 30 years with infrastructure improvements such as potable water, wastewater, electric, the roadways, and stormwater conveyance being dedicated to the city upon completion. A portion of this stormwater management system is constructed in rear yard easements outside the public right-of-way. These backlot stormwater swales are interconnected with stormwater piping and collection inlets that eventually convey stormwater to the basin throughout the development. Staff has received numerous complaints from various citizens in regards to the stormwater system, expressing their concerns about the ability for it to handle large rainfall events, the stormwater encroaching on the residential structures, yard erosion, sinkhole activity potentially related to the conveyance of the stormwater. Due to these complaints, staff has contacted CHW, Gainesville-based engineering firm that's in our engineering pool, and requested a proposal to evaluate the drainage facilities on Southwest 18th Avenue, 19th Avenue, 20th Avenue, 20th Place, and 21st Place. We requested that they tailor this proposal basically in 4 phases. So rather than incur the cost of the whole evaluation, we would look at it in small bites and see if we needed to move forward. And if the stormwater system was working effectively, we wouldn't incur additional costs. What we're requesting tonight is that authorize staff to issue a purchase order to CHW to perform this engineering evaluation on the segments of the Countryway stormwater management system and identified in their proposal for an amount not to exceed $30,000. Out of the potential cost, staff has identified $12,500 in the adopted budget that will not be spent as anticipated that we can put towards this phased approach. If additional funds are needed, we are requesting authorization to expend $17,500 in contingency funds if we have to do the entire $30,000 proposal. If for some reason the proposal identifies stormwater improvements are needed or construction is needed, we would budget for them in the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay. I can attest as someone who has spoken with a lot of the residents over there that this is something that we, eventually we're going to have to do this, and no reason to kick the can down the road any farther. We've got to get a second set of eyes on there and figure out how best to address these issues. Does the board have any questions for Jamie?
So there already is, the flooding is happening there after storms?
It's
I think we'll have
flooding
sinkholes,
issues, some
yeah.
sinkhole issues. I mean, it's some of the drain lines they're just right through people's backyard. So it's you know, when you have a big rain like we've had in the past few months, you know, you really see that there's some issues here that we just have to figure out.
Does the developer have any,
It's a good question for Jamie.
All
Does
right.
the developer have any
responsibility?
responsibility?
The maintenance and workmanship period for the various phases is over. It would be potential to have discussions with the developer if for some reason it was identified that it was not constructed as approved, and determine, you know, how we would move forward from there.
But I can attest to how much time Jamie has spent on this, trying to go back and pull up these records and find them, because you know, some of these things are
30 years old.
30 years old. You know, Commissioner
Will
Glander.
that $30,000 be spent, will that be part of what it's spent for? Is the research to see if the developer is culpable for some of it?
Well, basically what it is a survey and evaluation of the existing system, determine if it is constructed properly, and if it's constructed properly, if it's adequate and it will actually drain the area. If it's determined that there's an issue with the design or the issue with the construction, then we would determine what would be the best way to remediate that or address that.
Commissioner Martin.
I had a couple questions. Where is the 12.5 coming from?
That would be a question for Mr. Lee, and unfortunately he's not here.
At least a portion of it, I recall him telling me, was that the second inmate work squad that we're planning for is not getting started as early as we anticipated, and so we budgeted revenues that are not being spent, and so I think that's the primary source of the 12.5, is that inmate work squad is not starting as soon as anticipated.
Okay. I don't like looking at the off-budget items. I think it just kind of is not the correct way to operate. I am sensitive to the needs of those residents over there. I probably would be okay with the 12.5 if that's where it's coming from. I don't know if we want to put that off until Dallas can talk to us specifically about it. And as far as going after the developer, I mean, something 30 years old, I'd hate to spend attorney time. I'm sure it would be an off-budget item for the attorney also to try to pursue those kinds of things, and I don't know. I wouldn't feel good about that. I think there's probably better ways to spend that money, and then look at the remaining difference between that and the 12.5 and the 30 for budgeting next year.
Jamie, if the commission authorizes the 12.5, is that enough to get started?
Well, the engineering firm did break it up into 4 phases. Phase 1 has a cost of $2,500. Phase 2 has a cost of $15,000. Phase 3 has a cost of another $2,500. And Phase 4, if needed, would be $10,000. So,
And what's the timeline of those phases? And how do you get to 12.5 if phase
Phase
1?
1 could be completed in 1 to 2 weeks of notice to proceed.
So that's $2,500.
Phase 2 would be a 4-week process. Phase 3 would be a 2-week process. Phase 4 would be a 4-week process.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just if it's okay for me to interject, to Commissioner Martin's point about going off our budget script, I think that we hold that's an internal policy for us, is if it's not in the budget, if it's not anticipated in the budget, then it's not a project, unless it was something just extraordinary, and we'd like for this not to be extraordinary, but it just there's enough sense of urgency. We thought at least it should be in front of you guys. If we waited 9 months for next fiscal year and something, we have a flooding incident and people are saying, well, you were aware, staff, because we have been aware for the past 4 to 6 months. We've been working on it to see if there was a simpler solution. We just didn't want to answer that question about, well, why hasn't anyone taken action? And us say, well, we've just been waiting for a new budget cycle. So that said, we can get started on the thing, and I suspect before we get to the end of the fiscal year, there'll be other dollars that free themselves up. We just can't interject. So in some regards, item 2 should be the expenditure of up to $17.5, because the last thing we would do would be transfer contingency money in to cover this if we've exhausted all other revenue sources.
And I'll take the blame because it was probably my responsibility to be communicating this issue to you guys as it was unfolding. But Jamie's been working on it for probably 6 months, and it did kind of go through some phases where we felt like there were some cheaper options. We were going to be able to address it, and then further research and study, those kind of went away. But there just always seems to be something else that we have to talk about. So it's never made it to me communicating it to you. But I think the manager hits the salient point is, at this point, if there is a storm and there's a flood, then someone could legitimately say, well, you knew that there was an issue and you didn't do anything about it. And so I think we need to move forward on it. To the degree that we need to move forward on it is obviously up to you guys, but it has been kind of an ongoing issue. Commissioner Glanton.
I'm sensitive about the budget too, but things come up that aren't foreseen, and I would hate for the citizens to have damage to their homes or the floods, as you say, come up unexpectedly. When we're talking about it publicly, we can't deny we knew about it. I don't see how we cannot move forward with this engineering study. Maybe in the first couple of phases, would they get far enough along to see what we're looking at? And
Well, that's the whole reason we asked for a phased approach. We're hoping that between phase 1 and 2, we identify that, it is constructed, as designed. It does function, as it should, and then we can look at possible ways to accentuate that and deal with extraordinary events. To the mayor's point, when we originally started this discussion, we were talking about the back of 3 properties on 20th Place. But the further I dug into it and the more complaints that we got from citizens and the more information I got, I determined that it was a bigger, more regional issue for the whole development, and we needed to look at it as a whole.
Mr. Mayor, I would also offer that if the commission has real heartburn about encroaching on our contingency funding, that they could direct us to go back and find $17,500 worth of budgeted items that we think we could defer until next fiscal year. We'd be happy to do that, but I couldn't bounce them off of you tonight. We could just bring it back in way of a item for next meeting's consideration.
Any other, Commissioner Martin?
I don't know. I guess in my head, I look at contingency money as an immediate, almost kind of a 911 call. I see that for the water tower falling down or something, something a little bit more emergent. I'm sensitive to what you're hearing, and I understand what you're saying, but I think I'll hold on my previous comments at this time.
Further comments? Rest of the commission. I'll entertain a motion before
I think if I lived in that subdivision, it would feel like the tower was falling. So it'd be emergency. It sounds emergency. Maybe I'm reading more into it than what you're saying, but I don't see how we can go through another summer like we have here and not address it.
Well, I think the issue with an emergency metaphor is that just like a hurricane, and all of a sudden you can't find a generator anywhere because everybody kind of waits till the end. We can't predict when the next storm will be. I think we're out of the hurricane season, so maybe that's past. But it's a judgment call. I mean, what I'm hearing is that we have some of these funds that we can move right now, and staff is going to work towards trying to free up other funds towards it we're working on a phase so that we're not going to execute all of this money all at one time. And we can certainly, I wouldn't put them on the spot tonight to say, what can you cut out to find us the money? But I think if we give them that direction, that we think this is an emergency, but we want to recoup as much of that money as we can from things that we've budgeted, I trust them to go back and do that and then share that, how they manage that. Question there is, you know, we've already kind of worked our way through the tenseness of the budget. You might not like what they cut out, but for something that is, I know that we're kind of debating the term emergency, but for something that is in the emergency realm, I think we'd have to live with some of those compromises where we had to cut this out. Any other commissioner want to weigh in on this? Mr. Farnsworth?
I just go ahead and move to approve an engineering study for the Countryway stormwater system.
Okay, I have a motion to approve
Second that motion.
and a second. Any other questions or comments from the dais? Commissioner Martin?
Even once we get the study done, it doesn't move any dirt.
That is
What would be
correct.
the anticipation of paying for that?
Well, as stated in the staff report, if it identified deficiencies or construction that needed to occur, we would bring that back as part of our budget preparation, which starts in late January, early February. So we will be looking at next fiscal year's budget here shortly at the staff level.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments from the dais? Commissioner McGehee?
I don't know. I don't even know if this is possible, but I know that there are at least 2 other areas within the city where there are, like you're saying, these stormwater issues. 2 big places. One being State Road 45, right in the empty lot between Villaggio's and my shop, and the second would be Southwest 255th Street and Southwest 5th Avenue. That 3-way stop.
Yes, sir.
That thing's always underwater. Would it be possible to piggyback those, or would that be an additional?
255th is a project that we have in our capital improvement. It's one of our drainage issues that we have been looking at and trying to solve internally without hiring a consultant. I just had a conversation with a commissioner right before the meeting this evening that I have failed to follow up with the DOT lately as to where they are with the State Road 45 issue. We had, myself and the city manager, had a pretty good amount of correspondence with them about that issue and some documented pictures and whatnot in the past 6 to 12 months, but they really haven't responded or provided any potential solutions. So I had obligated that commissioner earlier that I would follow up tomorrow and see if we could address that issue.
And I would say to both commissioners' points, you know, those issues that you bring up, we believe that we have some solutions that we can figure out internally. This issue, you know, we can't move dirt around because the issue is so big. We need some help figuring out what is the best, most efficient way to go about solving it. So those issues, I agree, are severe issues, but they're issues that we believe we can fix internally, and we know the solutions. This one, we need a firm to help us figure out what is the solution here. And before we open it up to public comment on this, I'd just like to use this as a learning moment. You know, we often, I know, all are inundated by developers who feel like our P&Z process is too onerous, like we nitpick too much and we hold their feet to the fire too much. But this issue is exactly why we have that process, so that we don't end up, you know, tying a commission 30 years from now hands because, you know, we let something like this kind of happen. You know, that's why we have HOAs now, so that they issue. I'm not casting aspersions on the commission 30 years ago. We all make mistakes, but this is exactly why we have the processes that we have to try to avoid these kinds of situations. And with that being said, is there any public comment to this agenda item?
Actually, didn't plan on commenting, Mr. Mayor. The commission.
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
I am Jessica Mosinski Baker.
Welcome.
I do not live in Countryway, but my mom does. And to kind of piggyback on that, my parents moved to Countryway in 1998. and they live on 18th Avenue, or my mom does. Some of the storm drainage problems were already apparent at that point, even before all those other houses were built. And I know that the city had come out and fixed some stuff along the way, but I think it's important to note that some of these problems existed for 20 years, and that was the point where we could have got the developer involved in the process, and it wasn't fixed. And in fact, my mom actually was on vacation in July. I was checking her house. I drive up to her house, and there is a sea of cones and flags, and they were repairing the sinkhole that's been there for probably 20 years, with the fire hydrant there, and it might actually be finally fixed this time because the road is not actually
Fingers crossed. Don't
dipping
jinx it.
anymore.
Yeah.
I know. So I know that we all hate to spend emergency funds, whether it's personal or city, but something to think about, that had we acted as a city on some of this stuff as it was apparent when those houses were new on 18th Avenue and the rest of it wasn't there, that perhaps some of the other problems could have been at least prevented, because we would have been building on good infrastructure rather than bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Good evening,
Jim
sir.
Stainfield, citizen. Quick question. Don't we have a $50,000 contingency fund that you guys can direct anywhere?
That's
So
what
the
we're
money's in
discussing.
the budget. We have money. We're not going to expend money from one department or take money from something else. We have the money, so.
We're just stingy with that contingency.
I know you are, but we've never spent it.
We've
It
never
always-
have.
It rolls
I
over
know.
every year, so if
Yep.
we have an emergency, let's use it.
No
Thank
one's
you, sir.
stingier than I am about it.
I remember fighting for that $50,000 contingency fund, and then we never used it. And we budgeted $50,000 because we had gone over $50,000 every year for the past 5 or 6 years when we first came on. But side issue. Any other public comment to this? Any other commission comment on this agenda item? Okay, we have a motion to approve the study. Properly seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call, Commissioner McGehee. Commissioner Farnsworth. Commissioner Martin. Commissioner Glanzer.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1. Okay, and Jamie, you're staying tight. State Road 45 Force Main relocation.
As the Commission's aware, this is a project that we've discussed for the past 2 budget cycles in our capital improvement. In 2009, the City of Newberry Sewer System Modeling Study Master Report performed by Jones Edmonds Associates identified the need to redirect flows from lift station 18 and lift station 13 to lift station 10 to eliminate capacity issues associated with lift stations 7, 8, 9, and 1. This project is also necessary due to the fact it's eliminating an existing force main. It's located on a public utility easement in Phase 2 of Newberry Corners and interferes with the construction of 3 residential lots. We programmed this in our FY16-17 capital improvement budget. We contracted with an engineering firm, Woodward & Curran, for the design and permitting in 2016, and we received our construction permits July 2017. So RFB 2017-09 was advertised on October 30th, 2017. Sealed bids were received and opened on the 7th of December in 2017. We received bids from 7 firms. A copy of the bid tabulation and summary was attached to your staff report. Coleman Construction Company submitted the lowest responsive base bid for a total of $432,346.50. A copy of that's attached, as well as the project drawings. The requested action of the Commission tonight is to authorize the City Manager to execute a contract in the amount of $432,346.50 with Coleman Construction, Inc. for the State Road 45 Force Main Relocation Project, and authorize the City Manager to approve change orders not to exceed 10% of the contract amount.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner McGehee. Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Martin.
I'm pretty sure the Newberry Corners was approved in my tenure, and I'm wondering how we missed the force main encroaching on the 3 lots.
When the Newtown development was constructed and Lift Station 18 was built originally, early 90s, I believe, middle 90s, the force main came west from the Newtown entrance and came through the lower end of that open field that is now Newberry Corners on a public utility easement, it and the water main as well, and went south through the industrial park. The public utility easement was granted with the condition that if it ever interfered with any future development, that any infrastructure the city had there would be relocated. I can't speak to how it was missed in the development approval, but it is a condition of Phase 2 that the force main be relocated. Prior to my arrival, the City Commission authorized the construction of a new force main from Lift Station 10 in front of Hardee's and the upgrade of that lift station to facilitate this project. What it will basically do is divert all wastewater flow from Lift Station 18 in Newtown area, Newberry Corners, Lift Station 13, which is in 41 Commerce Park, the 2 lift stations at Easton, and divert all of that flow to the east side of 2741 into Lift Station 10, which is now your master station, and will also alleviate the immediate need to upgrade Lift Stations 8, 9, 7, and 1.
Follow up. Jamie, how, with eliminating those other stations, can you talk with us a little bit about what that does for our maintenance type projections out there? I mean, you're eliminating something that can fail that costs us money later.
Well, we're actually not totally eliminating the stations, but we are reducing the capacity draw on those, and it does offset the immediate need to upgrade or change those stations out. We do have one project slated for Lift Station 1 to upgrade, but that's because it's the oldest master station that you have and it receives the most amount of flow. By authorizing this contract and performing this work, it will alleviate probably 40 to 50% of the capacity that flows through those lift stations that I named and facilitate growth on the east and west side of 2741.
Is it extending their life by reducing some of the stress that those
That is
systems
correct.
have?
That
That's
is correct.
accurate.
And it's eliminating the potential for sanitary sewer overflows on those lift stations identified.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Commissioner McGee?
I wish Commissioner Coleman was here because we actually have a local contractor that won the bid. So, you know, I hate he got to miss that because he's always preaching
shoot some
about
fireworks off over his house on the way home. Any questions or comments from the public on this? We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to item F, authorization to submit 2 grant applications to Swanee River Water Management District. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a, I don't want to call it an unimportant item. It's an important item, but it is definitely a little lower on the scale of magnitude. For the last several years, we've been having regular discussions about the Alachua County's regulation of us with regards to wetlands and stormwater. They're in Golby, and they want to reduce the amount of nutrients that are entering to the environment. And all along the way, that as I've spoken to Alachua County and the Board of County Commissioners, that we think that it's better to collaborate on projects rather than to regulate, and that we think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there, a lot of opportunities to significantly reduce the amount of nutrient that gets into the environment without development of regulations that then become a cost burden to developers and residents in the community. And so some grant opportunities came along from the Water Management District. They have funding They have 2 funding cycles coming up, but the one that I'm interested in submitting application for is for what they call their Springs program. It's a multi-year program that looks at having dedicated annual funding to address springs restoration and springs protection. So I've identified 2 projects. I've discussed them with Alachua County, and I intend to discuss them with every other municipality and county organization, departments of health in the region that where we exist, the Suwannee River and Santa Fe River basins, that I think would have a much more significant impact on nutrient removal and protection of those water bodies than all of the stormwater regulations that can be anticipated in Alachua County. The first project is simply, I guess it's phase 1 of many, is to simply, through GIS mapping, identify every septic tank in the Fort White, High Springs, Newberry, Archer, Western Alachua County, Bell, Trenton, Eastern Gilchrist County, and Southwest Columbia County region. And it may surprise a lot of people. No one has ever mapped that. You would think that we already know where all that is, but all that data exists in a lot of different places, but no one's ever mapped it. And if it's mapped, then the opportunities to do something with it, like let's find concentrations of these septic tanks and let's take them off of septic tanks and come up with something that has more advanced treatment. So that it's kind of, to me, the 80-20 rule. We'll put in 20% of the effort and get 80% of the good, and then we'll move on to the next program. So project number 1 is a GIS mapping. I'm not proposing that there would be a match fund from Newberry. I'm proposing that the Springs grant, that we would get buy-in from all of these entities, and that the Springs grant would pay 100% for a consultant to map all that, and then that tool would then be utilized to see where can we take nutrients, where's the low-hanging fruit, where's the low-cost measures that we can enable, that we can enact to enable us to reduce nutrient loading. The second is a similar concept. Right now, I think the number 2 or number 3, it's number 2, the number 2 nutrient load into surface water bodies in our part of the country is wastewater. Number 1 being agriculture, is wastewater. And even though central wastewater systems remove 80 to 90% of the nutrients, there's a chance to get better with a treatment process called advanced waste treatment, which removes nitrogen down to the 1 to 2 milligrams per liter, very high level treatment for nutrients, which are nitrogen and phosphorus. There are no advanced waste treatment plants in western Alachua County or eastern Gilchrist County. They're all basic level like our treatment plant. And generally construction of these plants are economies of scale. So it would cost a lot for all the small entities that treat wastewater to build separate advanced treatment plants. There's an opportunity maybe to ideally locate one advanced waste treatment plant, a larger scale, and then pump nutrient-laden water to them, remove the nutrients, and discharge it into the environment. That'd be mutually beneficial to everybody that utilizes them. So that's a rough outline. It's in the items that we've identified for the state legislature. We talked about with Archer, but it shouldn't be limited to a Newberry or an Archer. It should be something that eastern Gilchrist County, southern Columbia County, and western Alachua County are looking at. It's definitely, like I said, bigger than Newberry. I think that we can get county governments involved in it and get the Water Management District looking at and see if there is that opportunity. And if there is, I think that funding would come along to build an advanced wastewater treatment plant that would, again, have a significant impact on the amount of nutrients that are discharged into the environment. So the action that's being requested is authorize us to submit a grant application and enlist other municipalities and county governments to support us by resolution of some of those things. We're proposing no matching funding on that either. It'd be 100% funded by the Water Management District.
Commissioner Martin?
I'll offer a motion, and I'll tell you why. In favor of submitting the applications. Number 1, this actually addresses the nutrient issue versus the bogus stormwater, wastewater efforts that the county has been putting forward. That's number one. Number two, you always hear me rail against grants. Despite popular opinion, my effort to stop grants is more on the federal level. I feel like federal grants just add to our $20 trillion in debt, and this one doesn't actually do that. So therefore, I move that we do move forward with submitting the application grants.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Other comments or questions from the board? Commissioner Glanzer?
I just had one question on that second grant. Is that actually going to build the treatment plant, or what will it do?
It'd be the initial feasibility study
Oh.
to see how it would work and kind of put a number on, well, gee, what would it cost? Those types of things.
I'd like to just take a moment, especially because I have some students here in the room, to just echo Commissioner Martin's comments. Newberry has often, in the past few years, blazed a trail on some alternative approaches to issues, and I know that that was a lot to take in, but those are actually two really creative ways to think outside the box to mend and blend both sides of the spectrum and to make some advancements in the environment and also do it in a fiscally conservative, responsible way. So it is possible for government to work on both sides and for everybody. So with that, is there any public comment on the grant applications? No? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Good job to staff. And that brings us to comments. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr.
Knowing
Mayor.
that kickoff is in about 7 minutes. And they have a BOA meeting. Not they
Thank you,
have a
Mr.
BOA
Mayor.
meeting.
Just first item, I know the commission is aware, most of the community is aware, but just to reiterate that our finance director, Dallas Lee's father, passed away unexpectedly last week. It's a tough situation for Dallas to go through, so we just ask for your prayers, your support, well wishes for Dallas and his family. He has his father leaves Dallas's mom, Dallas's sister, and a sister, I believe, also in Jacksonville as survivors. So the services are going to be this Saturday. They're in Jacksonville. Some of us will be traveling. I think I'll pass along all the service information for you if you have an opportunity and a desire to attend. But wanted to share that with you. We had a new codes enforcement officer begin work today. It's a part-time contract worker. We think we've got the best in the state. The gentleman that's working for us is Mr. Wolf, 27 years in the experience, past president of the American Code Enforcement Officers Association, past president of the Florida Codes Enforcement Officers Association. We're pretty pleased to have him on board and hope he can make a big difference for us.
A code enforcement officer whose name is Wolf? I like it.
He says that compliance starts at introduction. My name is Mr. Wolf, and people immediately start taking care of their issues. The Florida legislation session for 2018 begins tomorrow morning with the state of Florida addressed by Governor Scott. This legislative session promises to be just as entertaining as last session with assault on local government. So I will keep you abreast. We have trips to Tallahassee. I ask that you stay abreast of the issues and that you advocate for Newberry and for small cities. We're going to need all the support we can get. We're meeting Wednesday with officials from all the other small cities, the 8 small cities in Alachua County, to discuss local option fuel tax. We'll need your prayers then as well. I'm kidding, but we've got a challenging situation in front of us. Next Monday, and I believe you all have this handout, next Monday is the city's Martin Luther King Day of Service celebration. It'll be at the Martin Luther King Center. 11:30, we're starting at the Freddie Warmack Park, and we're marching over to the center, and then we'll have a program and lunch at noon. I encourage you all to attend. Meeting with Alachua County to discuss annexation and roads at the end of the month. Also towards the end of the month on Tuesday, January the 23rd at 5 o'clock, Alachua County Board of County Commissioners will be entertaining their wetlands ordinance. Not stormwater and wetlands, just wetlands. So I've sent you all a calendar reminder. At what they've indicated publicly is they're gonna go for the negotiated settlement, which is countywide ordinance, but it's not quite as stringent as originally thought. They're going to have exclusions for certain previously developed mapped areas. So the county, my understanding is the county commission believes that's a compromise position, and I urge you to attend and advocate for opt-in.
Mike, before you get too far from the Martin Luther King, they're going to start at Freddie Warmack and march to the center. Are we getting a bus or a shuttle, or if you want to do the march to get people back, or are you, if you march, you're signing up on marching back too to get your car?
That is a great idea that I'm certain someone on staff thought of, but it wasn't me.
Okay.
But we'll make sure we can get
I'm inherently
folks back.
lazy, so I'm doing the way. But
We'll make sure we can get folks back if they need a ride back. Great point. And just a final comment is that the FMEA, Florida Municipal Electric Association, their legislation days are in Tallahassee, February 5th and 6th. That's a Monday and a Tuesday. They'll have an agenda set for us, things to speak with our legislators about, mostly related to the electric industry, but that's an opportunity to speak with them about any issue that we think is important to Newberry. Encourage anybody that would like to attend to let me know, and we'll get you signed up, and we'll get you there. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. City Attorney? Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Yes, I'd like to extend my condolences to Dallas Lee and his family, and also I would like to invite anyone who's interested in running for office or interested parties in our election process to visit the elections link on the city's website. It should be completed by Wednesday this week, and throughout the process I will be adding announcements, and there's information for both candidates and the public. I also plan to schedule 2 orientations, group orientations prior to qualifying, and you are welcome to give me a call here at any time between 8 and 5 and have a one-on-one orientation, or if there's any way that I can help you get started with the process, I am available. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And Mr. McGee. Commissioner McGee.
Yeah, first thing, these mics are great. It's so nice to actually have conversations up here and not hearing that popping and cracking. So good job, staff, on that. Really liking the TVs too. These AV upgrades are nice. I was heading home from Gainesville, and I saw the guys flushing the water main. They had the hydrants open. That was awesome to see. So that means we're getting to the finish line with that water extension. So just want to thank staff for the amount of time and effort that was put into it. That's a monumental task to do something that big of a project in a little over a year. So kudos to them. And then just wanted to. It was already mentioned earlier, the meeting at Newberry Elementary School about the facility upgrades. Yeah, there is a tax associated with it. We're going to get you in there, and we're going to talk about all the things we want, and then we're going to tell you how we're going to pay for it. And the plan is to put another half-cent sales tax on the ballot. So just don't want anybody to go in there and get blindsided by that. But that seems to be the way they're selling this. Hey, come in, let's talk about it, and you tell us all the good stuff you want to do, and then you're going to get hit with a price tag. So just wanted everybody to be aware of that. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner Farnsworth.
I think our manager has a birthday coming up in a couple of days or so, and I just want to say happy birthday to you. I don't know how old you are, but the word dirt was mentioned at one time, so but
I'm older than dirt.
that's what I'm saying. Anyhow, congratulations.
Am I the only person sitting at the dais that would have a birthday this week? Mr. Mayor, I failed to mention that one of our commissioners has a birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday, Commissioner Farnsworth.
62. Any gifts are appreciated.
Commissioner Martin?
I was actually very impressed with the speed at which the pipe was installed along 26. The biggest question I had come up to me was why the fire hydrants turned the other way, but that was pretty much it. I think it's just a good project. I think it's forward-thinking, and being fiscally conscious of how we're spending that money and hoping to get the most bang for the buck. We really are hoping everybody's on board with how that will hopefully transpire. I also wanted to commend the staff for, which I guess is probably fairly common, but we had some residents last week whose bills were due, and they were expected to be cut off right in the middle of the cold. As a community and as a courtesy, we did not turn those people off in the middle of the cold. Again, I think that's just one thing that makes Newberry great. I think that's the kinds of things that we want to be doing on a regular basis, but it doesn't mean you can't pay your bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Glanzer?
Thank you. I just want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. I'm looking forward to a robust year that we're going to get a lot of good things done for Newberry, and I'm really excited about it. I want to give my condolences to Dallas as well. We're very sorry for his family and send our prayers. And regarding the birthday, when my brother turned 70, he had a comment that made us all laugh. He said he was old as dirt and twice as dusty. So, happy birthday to all those of you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Glanzer. I would add my condolences to Dallas as well. That's certainly a hard time to get through. I had just a couple of things. I posted on social media a few weeks back about an organization called SCORE. And they keep track of the areas of the state. They're a nationwide organization, but the chapter here in Florida keeps track of the parts of the state that are growing and growing most rapidly so that they can be where they feel like they need to be. This organization's a nonprofit. It's composed of all volunteers, and they're mainly people who have retired from business. And they offer a mentoring service to business. So if you're just starting off, you can contact them and tell them the kind of business you're thinking about, and they'll pair you with a mentor that successfully worked in that field for 30 years and retired out of it. It's a completely free service. They're going to have an office here in Newberry because they've identified Newberry as the third fastest growing city in the state, and they want to be here to help businesses succeed and be successful in Newberry. So that contact information is on my Facebook page. I'm asking if the commission would be willing to be a partner with them. That would just mean that they would be able to put their contact information on our website, link to it. Most of their mentoring would happen in the office. Is going to be in small groups. Every once in a while, they offer workshops, which could potentially, and whoever shows up, so it could potentially be larger. Predominantly, those workshops are during the week, but that if the city and SCORE were partners, that would give them access to the municipal building during the weeknights. I told them the weekends are kind of really pushing to get that rental business in there. Is the commission willing to think about that? We can bring it back up on the agenda. I just wanted to kind of put that out there for you. The second thing is that Commissioner Pinkinson, a county commissioner who represents our district, his seat is up and he's not running. There's already 3 people who have come out to put their name in the ring for that. During the sheriff election cycle, Newberry hosted a very successful debate, and obviously we had some strong interests in that service in the county, and it helped bring some spotlight to Newberry. It helped bring some spotlight to the issues that we care about in the rural area. And it seems like since that seat is specifically supposed to represent our area, that it may be another opportunity for us to embark on that endeavor again. So it's not something that you need to say yay or nay tonight. It's just something I wanted you to think about. I wouldn't even offer it, but we did a tremendous job at the sheriff's. We got rave reviews. It was very professionally run, but it is an awful lot of staff work and staff time. And I don't know how many hours they put. I know I put in a lot of hours on it, and I'm sure they did 3 or 4 times the work that I did. But because it's our district, and we certainly have lots of issues with the county that we'd like to discuss and make sure are in the forefront of their mind. So if you guys could think about that, I would appreciate it. And with that, we'll open it up to public comment. Welcome, sir. Come on down.
Good evening. My name is Andy Howell. Thank you, Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, and City Manager for this opportunity to speak tonight. I am with Alachua Astronomy Club. I am Vice President. My colleagues Mike Toomey and Chuck Broward are here tonight. We just wanted to raise a couple of points in regards to the planned upgrades to the Easton Newberry Sports Complex as it impacts the Alachua Astronomy Club and the Star Park, which we operate for Easton Newberry Sports Complex. A little background about Alachua Astronomy Club, Inc. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. As a service to the Newberry community, we operate and manage the Star Park at Easton Newberry Sports Complex. The Star Park was founded in 2011 thanks to the work of Doug Eng and the generosity of this commission. The Star Park in the years since has hosted events like the International Observe the Moon Night, the Venus Transit of the Sun in 2012, and also monthly Star Party and outreach events. The reason we are here tonight is to address the proposal that City Manager New presented on December 21st to the tenant organizations at Eastern Newberry Sports Complex. We were very happy to see the plan. I think it's been several years in preparation. The plan has a lot of good points, but there's one that I want to address tonight with respect to the Star Park. So here is kind of a blow-up of the plan that City Manager New presented on December 21st. Of course, these are the sports fields, laser tag, archery. I understand that 3 new multi-purpose fields will be installed here. They're numbered 3, 4, and 5. Currently, the Star Park is located right about there where my index finger is. The plan is to bring the Star Park and put it down here at the indicated blue rectangle. The maintenance building for the complex is currently located here with the gray rectangle, and I believe it's going to go down here to that gray rectangle south of the stormwater management facility. So the problem that I see with this particular arrangement is that the access to the maintenance building would be only via this dirt path. The access road goes around like this, and so maintenance vehicles would have to go from the access road to the maintenance building back and forth, and clearly that would cross the observing field of the Newberry Star Park. Another disadvantage of this particular plan is that placing the maintenance building here blocks growth of the stormwater management facility to the south. And listening to the discussions tonight, stormwater is a pretty big issue. So I would think that we would want to move the maintenance building from this point to somewhere else in the complex. A couple of advantages to that. Number one is it would eliminate the back and forth pattern of maintenance vehicles across the Star Park property. The other advantage is that it would allow the stormwater management facility to grow, to be extended somewhat southward, which would allow for a larger basin, a larger management facility. So our plan, in summary, would generate something like this. So the stormwater management facility would grow a little bit to the south, which would expand the area. Now, we've indicated the maintenance building could go right there on the north side of the stormwater management facility. It doesn't have to go there. It could go anywhere else in the complex, I believe, so that it is centrally available to the other tenant organizations. Of course, I know that for a fact that the RC Club uses the maintenance building a lot, and I would expect that the new multi-purpose fields would also need access to the maintenance building. So whether the maintenance building is put here or somewhere else, I think that would be better than putting it here on the south side of the stormwater management facility. So I hope this makes sense. I'm looking forward to the quarterly meetings that are planned to happen at East Newbury Sports Complex during the coming year, when we'll have opportunity to coordinate with the other organizations about this plan and other issues that pertain to the Star Park.
Mr. Manager, do you want to respond? I mean, I think most of these things would fall under the manager's purview. There's a lot of moving parts in this, and I'm sure he'd be willing to have a meeting with you and sit down and kind of talk about those things. I don't know that we have a way tonight to sit here and say, yeah, that sounds good to us, because there's an awful lot of work that's gone into the design of that we're not privy to. You know, we say, let's go do this, and then it becomes the manager's job to figure out how to make all these moving parts fit together. So I appreciate your time, and we love having the park out there, and I like the visual aids. But what is it? Are you just asking us to ask the manager to sit down and discuss these things with you?
Well, my original understanding was that this plan would be presented to the commission tonight. Evidently, obviously, it was not. So I just wanted to have this opportunity to introduce ourselves to the commission. We haven't done that in several years, and also to raise this single issue or concern regarding the location of the Star Park.
And Mr. Mayor, just so to help out our elected officials, the rest of the story, we did meet with all of the tenants out there. It's kind of a commission direction at some point in the past that, hey, we got to do a better job communicating with our recreational partners. And so this meeting we had in December was our first step at that. One of the agenda items was talking about the development of a master plan for Easton. And we showed, as part of a presentation, a concept. But that master plan is a long ways from completion. And we didn't mean to. Evidently, I portrayed that as this is pretty fixed, and actually it's very fluid. I would say that for everyone's understanding, the most important components are with a 100-acre site, which we will have, 110-acre site, we're going to locate the big facilities first and then tuck the smaller things in around. And so we were trying to portray that. I think you have great comments, and I appreciate that. And we'll continue to solicit comments from you as we move through the process. I don't think the commission will see the master plan for several months. But what you will see, commission, is that our next meeting will be the project plan for the spending of Wild Spaces money, which will identify the projects by name, but won't, and the master plan is actually one of those projects, and a finance plan to go along with that. So we'll introduce that item for discussion at our next commission meeting. Had intended to have it tonight, and just there were some more wrinkles that needed to be ironed out before we made it live for our commission.
Is that satisfactory? You guys have many more bites at the apple. Did you have something to say, sir?
My name is Michael Toomey. I've been with the Alachua Astronomy Club since 1998. I also want to add a little bit of context. This will be my last opportunity to speak before you as I move in out of state. When we first came online with this process, we were under the impression that there would be a lighting curfew of 9 p.m. on every night. And our understanding, this was born from taxpayer concerns. They didn't want to light up fields from dusk to dawn. And this was the impetus that got the Astronomy Club on board. And we've invested over $20,000 of private funds, club funds, corporate donations and what like into this project. As the years have gone and new tenants have arrived, evidently they either were given exemptions or were simply not informed that there was a 9 p.m. lighting curfew, and this has caused a strain on the complex. We hope that we have attempted to mitigate these lights one by one, and we've had some cooperation, we've had some successes, but with each step, we seem to get a new hurdle, and so as we're looking at some redevelopment plan here, this seemed like the right time to inject and say, we'd like to see that 9 p.m. curfew enforced. If there are to be exemptions, please let us know what those are so we can work with them or around them or through them or what have you. Yep, that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. I didn't know that we had made an agreement for a lighting curfew, but it seems to be an easy fix of just being able to communicate with all the tenants out there and figure out what nights you guys are there. So I'm sure the manager will address that as well.
Mr. Mayor,
He's Commissioner Farnsworth.
I was just curious, how often are you out there?
Generally speaking, we like to organize at least one outdoor event each month. It was our original inception that we would do more with the schools, and we've invited the schools and the principals to have field trips out. I understand the teachers are under a lot of strain, so I don't want to pass the buck there.
I appreciate
so they
that.
did not grasp that too quickly. So instead, we retooled, and now we have opened up what was going to be our monthly private star party as to a private and public star party, and we've been receiving increase in success with that. I don't have the numbers, but maybe Mr. Howell can provide that. But every single month we see at least 1 or 2 new folks turn out, and many of them are from Newberry.
These parties that you've extended to students, I'm assuming they have to happen at night, right?
Right, correct.
That's always a problem for minors.
Certainly, yes. So we also have summer programs that we're trying to introduce too.
Yeah. All right. Commissioner Martin?
Yeah, I actually was unaware of the 9 p.m. curfew as well, but I think those quarterly powwows that are expected more regularly coming forward will help kind of the communication on that. Is it because of the RC park, particularly on a Friday night when you're trying to do your
right.
thing?
Well, we've noticed the ballparks have gone off pretty religiously at 9 p.m. As some of the other tenants that either were not informed or simply are not subjected to the same requirement.
Okay.
Maybe because they have their own meter. I don't know what that situation is.
I apologize. There's probably oversight on our side of the table, so I'm sure we can get that checked into.
Okay, and the other thing, the other issues related to this is that the RC Park would like to extend hours beyond 9 p.m. We can work around that if we had a central calendar scheduling publicly available so that we won't overlap events. And we'd certainly be happy to work within those confines.
Yeah, your point's well taken. Did anything on the mapping consider proximity to the RC park or proximity? You were talking about the dusting back and forth, because God knows you probably have plenty of dust now where you are. So,
yes, I believe that
that
the concept shown here will alleviate or mitigate some of the light issues that we have. One of the main light issues we have actually is headlights. We have a lot of traffic currently going along the dirt access road along the ball field. There's traffic going to the laser tag as well as to the RC park. The headlights are very interrupting. They interfere a lot with our night vision. So I think that putting the Star Park down here in a relatively out-of-the-way location to the south side of the stormwater management facility would be a nice step forward to mitigate the light issues.
Okay. Any other questions from the dais? No? All right. Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none. Meeting adjourned. Yep.